Welcome to Break the Bank Garage. In this video, I'm going to demonstrate how to replace the front brake pads and rotors on this 2013 Fiat 500. To complete this job, I have two brand new rotors. I've got all of the front brake pads, including the brake hardware and the grommets and caps. The main tools I'm going to use for this job is a 17mm socket for removing the wheels, a 12mm deep socket for removing the studs. I'll use a 7mm Allen key and a 19mm socket for removing the caliper brackets. Before we get started, please just take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Let's get going. First thing you'll need to do is jack up the car, get it on a lift, and make sure it's secure. Then you can remove the wheels using a 17mm socket. Once the wheels are off, we'll remove these two studs. It might be a good idea to let these soak for a little bit in some sort of penetrating oil like PB Blaster. Then you can use a 12mm deep socket to back these out. If you don't have an impact wrench, you'll need somebody in the car holding the brake so that the hub assembly doesn't spin while you try to remove them. Now you can take a pliers and remove this spring. Now we can start working on the back of the caliper. It's a good idea to turn the wheel all the way to the left when you're working on the driver's side and all the way to the right when you're working on the passenger side so you have maximum access behind the caliper. On the back side of the caliper, you'll see these two plastic caps. You can just pull those caps out. And underneath there will be a 7mm Allen key bolt. Go ahead and remove both of those. They might come all the way out like this one, or they might just start spinning. Either way, it's fine. You can just leave them in there. Now we can compress the caliper piston just enough to get the caliper off by putting your flat blade screwdriver right there inside of the rotor. And just prying a little bit. Now you should be able to pull the caliper right off. You may need to take a flathead screwdriver, just pry a little bit on the bottom and on the top. And it'll come right off probably with the pads still in the caliper. We can go ahead and remove the old pads from the caliper. And for now, we'll take a caliper hook, or you can use a clothes hanger and just hang this up out of the way. Now we'll go back around to the back, and we can remove these two 19mm bolts. I'm going to use a breaker bar just to get them loose. And to get my impact on this top one, I need a swivel socket. When those bolts are off, the caliper bracket will come right off. This rotor is loose, but sometimes they are stuck onto the hub. Just take a hammer, hit it right here around the edge, and it should break loose. Then you can remove the rotor. Now before we can put the new rotor on, we need to clean up this surface. It doesn't have to be shiny, you just want to get off anything that might kind of stick out and stop the rotor from seating properly. Then if you've got some, it's a good idea to put a little bit of anti-seize around the hub. And I'm going to get some in the threaded holes here where those studs go. It's a good idea to take your wire brush and clean up the channels here where the new pads are going to sit. Now we can put on our new rotor, and these small holes have to line up with the threaded holes on the hub. And you can take one of the two studs and thread it in. You want to get both of the threads started and just hand tightened before hitting them with the impact. Now I'll tighten those down nice and light. They don't have to be too tight. Now the caliper bracket can go back on and you can start the bolts behind it by hand. Once they're both started, you can tighten them down. Now we have to recompress the caliper piston. There are a few different ways to do this. You can put the old pad right in there and take a C-clamp and just tighten it down to squeeze the piston back in. Or you can use one of these style caliper compression tools. You can borrow these at most local auto parts stores. I'm going to use this style of caliper compression tool. Just in case anyone's watching who has never done brakes before, I'll explain what we're doing here. Basically, every time you hit the brake, pressure goes behind this piston and this piston comes out to squeeze the pads together around the rotor. As the pads wear down, this gap becomes narrower and narrower. But now that we're putting brand new pads on that are much thicker than the worn down ones we just took out, we have to reset this by pushing this piston all the way back inside of the caliper. Now the kit I got came with new rubber grommets, so we're going to replace both of these. I just got a punch tool and I'm just going to work on folding them in. Now to get the new grommets in, you'll want to apply some brake grease to it. That'll make them slide in a lot easier. You may want to also grease inside of here. And there's really no easy way to do this. You just have to kind of try to fold it like I just did until you get the rim of it all started. And then just keep working it. Once you get it close, if you take a non-sharp object and you're very careful, you can try to kind of pull that lip around. Now once you've got it all the way in, or if you're close, push one of the slide pins through. And that'll help it get that last little bit. Just make sure that can slide freely back and forth. Now with both of the grommets in, you can grease the slide pins and get them both started. Now we can put the pads in. Make sure to grease the ears of the pads, all 4 of them. Then grease this bracket where the back pad goes into the piston. To get the back pad in, make sure that all of these clips are started well inside the piston, and then it'll pop right in. The front pad you can set right inside the caliper bracket. Now we can flip the caliper down and put it back over the bracket. Now for the 2 slide pins that take the Allen key, it's a good idea to start those by hand. You'll have to apply some pressure and make sure that they're lined up correctly as they are sliding through the grommet there. And only after you've got them started by hand, you can use a power drill. Now you can pop in the new caps that were included with the kit. Then the last thing is to install the tension spring. I like to just give this a few taps to make sure it's seated in properly. And there you go. So that is one side complete. You're going to do pretty much the exact same thing to the other side. And then you've got new pads and rotors on your Fiat. Now, before you go driving anywhere, you're going to want to push the brake pedal a few times, pump it about 4 or 5 times until it goes from soft to firm. That's going to recompress that caliper piston that we pushed back. Then you can put the wheels back on the car and you're ready to go. If you found this video helpful, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Thanks so much for watching, and here are a few other videos I think you might like.